Hello, welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed, and we are reading the Philosophical Midwifery book today to understand the nature of human problems and what we need to do to be able to solve them, which is why we have...
No one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
That's our friend from Some More News on YouTube, pointing out the issue that he has had to deal with his whole career. And what we are doing here is learning the activity or skill required to be able to solve problems and learn. It's called the dialectic, and the art is called the art of philosophical midwifery, named after Socrates. Well, Socrates named it after his mother. Only not a midwife of babies like his mother, but a midwife of ideas. Specifically to remove human problems or to solve human problems that we face every day, repeatedly, cyclically, without being able to relate to the evidence and reason we would need to relate to solve that problem. In other words, we are blocked by a certain kind of idea called a pathologos belief. Pathologos, patho, sick, logos, well, sick reasoning you could say, or sick thinking, sick talking, because logos involves all of that. So we're here to discover and follow the logos, but the pathologos blocks us, causing our problems. So another way of saying unable to relate to evidence and reason that would disprove the false belief that we are attached to and functioning through, the cause, is another way of saying an inability to relate to logos, which is the job of the pathologos, to block you from logos. Your job as a soul is to follow the logos all the way to the first and final cause. The first cause of everything, but also the final cause because, well, that's where we're headed. That's the end of the game too. So sometimes it's called that for the sake of which. When you're building a house, there are a lot of causes. You need wood, you need workmen, you need blueprints. But the final cause is you need someone who to live in the house. The reason for going through all of that, hiring builders, sourcing wood, drawing blueprints, is so that you have a house to live in. So when is the activity finished? When you're living in the house. When's our activity finished? At the end of the self-logos, which takes us to the self. When we can know ourselves, and because we've reached there through understanding, we can function through it. So we can know ourselves and show ourselves in our most natural, good, excellent, pure state of our authentic selves. So that's our goal as human beings, to follow the logos to the final cause or the self while functioning through it. To do that, we have to remove that which blocks us from following the logos. The name of that thing is the pathologos. The name of the activity of removing it is midwifery. Therefore, come to some conclusions. What would that mean about... You come to some conclusion. What would that mean about schools? What would that mean about humanity? What would that mean about your relationships? If that's our function as a human being. Share your conclusions below in the chat or in the comment section. I'm going to be wiggling around in my chair because I have a bit of a sore back at the moment because of my terrible mattress that I'm trying to get refunded or returned. So excuse me for wiggling around a lot. So that's our job. Let's jump in. Oh, and thank you for joining me. Okie smoggy. So to review, we are in chapter 3, belief and analogy. We have identified 6 kinds of beliefs. Axiom, scientific, simple, supernatural, prejudice, and pathologos. They are arranged in a hierarchy, which means it's not everything goes or everyone is just as right as everyone else. The kind of nonsense, bullshit talking point that fascists will often use to get you to shut up. Hey, that's just your opinion. My opinion is Nazism is great. I guess we'll just have to compromise in the middle somewhere. Or maybe allow both. That's stupid. There's a hierarchical arrangement. That's what it means to understand. So we're also learning about understanding. This is important. As a midwife, we are helping people navigate their way out of a specific kind of belief. So we can't play dumb in order to be nice, polite slaves to the house or to your family or to your parents or to your religion or to your society or to your, community group. Hey, don't ever question anyone's beliefs. No politics in here. No talk about politics and religion are stupid catchphrases used by fascists or people stuck in a tyrannical way of being to silence the logos, which means they are motivated by their pathologos, whose job it is to silence the logos. Can't do that if you want to be free or mature or a good person, because a good person recognizes that some beliefs, like prejudices, are bad. And some beliefs, like supernatural beliefs that can't ever be proven, are absurd. Okay? And as a midwife, or as any human being here to address their problems, we have to distinguish the pathologos as a kind of belief within a hierarchical order, which means there is judgment, which means we do put a value on some better than another. We value certain kinds of beliefs better than others, and pathologos is the worst one. This is understanding. Can't function with an art without understanding. So, the hierarchical order from axiom to pathologos indicates the degree to which judgments about oneself, the natural world, so this is how we think about ourselves, this is how we think about the world that we are in, the theoretical, and the divine. What is that which is eternal, immortal, the highest part of ourselves and reality? So, it's the degree to which they're justified. And common feature about a pathologos and prejudice is they're always false, accepted from others. Prejudice can be about anything. The pathologos is prejudice can be nullified or modified with opposing data. Pathologos maintains its self-security and is even strengthened by data and evidence. The more you try to reason with someone who's in their pathologos, the more that they might feel justified in that pathologos, which is interesting. Which is why midwifery is essential. You might think you're helping someone to reason them through their pathologos, but it won't work. And it might even strengthen their ignorance. You might notice this because you've had the same conversation with your friend over and over, but it doesn't seem to be sinking in. To quote the Oracle,
"You're a wizard."
No.
The problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into.
So reasoning yourself into a position would be moving up this ladder to scientific beliefs and axioms, and then beyond beliefs to what we are doing, understanding. But pathologos is right down the bottom. They didn't reason themselves into it. Hey, welcome, sus. philosophy or philosophy. Ooh, what's philosophy? Because philosophy is philos, which is love, which is a feeling. And Sophia is wisdom. And wisdom involves both the highest feeling possible, the experience people call bliss, when you are able to know, or your mind is able to experience mind, so you experience everything all at once. It's the model of beauty because it's perfectly ordered and symmetrical and harmonized. It's the model of justice because it's necessarily and perfectly ordered the way it needs to be, in the best possible way. So we use that highest feeling state or highest experience as the model of beauty and justice in philosophy and in the dialectic, because to free ourselves from the pathologos, we have to discover our models of beauty and justice, a certain state of being that our parents were in when they finally showed themselves and they seemed more real and true. And it was a rare moment where they passed on a teaching. Usually when you were doing what you're here to do, following the self-logos, they'll come in and say, not in this house, or let me tell you something. All of those thinkers are bad. You need to play footy, or whatever it was. So that's the highest feeling state, or minding mind, because the activity of knowing something is mind. What it's knowing is itself, and the thing knowing it is your mind. So it's minding mind. But of course, that's not the end of it. That's just where we experience reality and the models for things like beauty and justice. But we still have the question, what the heck is it that is having that experience? So it's not the end, but it is a feeling or state of mind. That's part of wisdom. But also, hey, it's no use just going to having an experience if you don't understand it. That's what we're talking about with pathologos. You're having an experience of reasoning with someone, but it doesn't affect them. Because
The problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into.
so feeling or experience enough experience ain't enough. So wisdom involves also understanding what you're experiencing. Number one, so you can get there because it's our method. So understanding of the dialectic is the spiritual method. But also, when you're there, you want to make sense of what you're seeing. You don't want to be overwhelmed or terrified by that which is most real and beneficial and illuminating and inspiring. You don't want to go to the best football game of the year, let's say rugby game, the Rugby World Cup final, and you have no understanding and language. You don't know what a scrum is. You don't know what a tackle is. That would be a very terrible experience because they look like they're fighting, because they are brutes. Rugby is brutish sport. Scary, violent. But if you have the language, you can actually want to go there and appreciate what's going on and maybe see the game in a greater depth if you understand the terms, the captain, who's calling the shots, the plays. So wisdom involves both feeling or states of mind and understanding. Philosophia, love of wisdom. So philosophy is philosophy and thinkosophy together. How's your world, Sus? So with that in mind, we recognize also that instead of relating with integrity and reason and evidence to the moment, the problems are caused by a false analogy being applied to the moment. This moment is just a copy of the more real experience from the past. Now we can understand why our soul does it by looking at that explanation we just gave of wisdom. If the ultimate experience is beauty and justice itself, which we use as the model for beautiful and just things in the world and in our midwifery and in our dialectic, we are applying that as a kind of analogy. So if that's our goal, or if that's the spiritual experience, if that's the purpose of the spiritual experience or the initiation experience, then we can see we're doing the exact same thing when we are stuck in our problems, only it's the imitation. When our parents finally showed themselves in that way, they weren't actually beauty itself or justice itself. They were imitating. There were no questions involved, no reasoning, all of the things needed in teaching. So it was a kind of fake spiritual experience based on people who were lying and faking, while preventing all of the things really involved in learning and spiritual experience, including asking questions, testing in your own experience, judging. None of that's allowed. So it's a bastardization of enlightenment is the cause of human problems. Which is important because we need to know how to solve human problems, but also we can gain insight into what we're really here for. The real enlightenment. And last time we looked at the two kinds of analogies that humans can, learn through. The real one, which is the teaching analogical paradigm. So paradigm is another word for blueprint or model. So we talked about the causes needed to build a house, including blueprints. You can find an analogical equivalent to what we are doing in philosophy, only at a higher level. So the word for blueprints when it comes to reality and mind and souls is paradigm. So the teaching paradigm or blueprints is this. A is to B, as B is to C. Socrates is, let's say, Diotima, the female guru who taught Socrates. So any sexists, there goes your sexism. Or unless, of course, it's a pathologos, in which case if it's a prejudice against women, then with the introduction of this new reasoning and evidence, you can nullify or modify with this opposing data. You can get out of your prejudice and realize, women are just as capable as men to play philosophy and master philosophy and become, what's the word? What do you pick? Enlightened? Guru? Midwife? Reached your destiny? Completed your work? Finally entered the true race of human beings? Become mature? All of those things. If you still have any view that somehow women are less than men, even without that, in spite of that evidence, it may be related to a pathologos. Important to point out because that's where we are in history. Beating up women based on ignorance and absurdity and pathologos. So, where are we? A is to B. So Diotima is to Socrates, as B is to C, as Socrates is teaching us. So too, as Socrates is teaching us, or in this instance, it's Pierre, as Pierre is teaching us, philosophical midwifery, so too can we pass on the teachings to others and therefore participate in the true teaching paradigm. True teaching analogical paradigm. And of course, it is very important to share your understanding and insights and work with others. And that was one of the things that was given to us as a challenge in the last chapter. And he talked about discovering something more about yourself in the act of teaching others, but also discovering more about your humanity. There seems to be a necessary activity of being the mean in your own development. Now, we always talk about it being secondary. Primarily, you are here for you. Doesn't matter if no one else gets on board with this game, you can do your work here and improve your soul, or actually complete your work here by mastering the logos, as Socrates told us to do. However, there does seem to be something significant and maybe even necessary about the next step, passing on the teaching. Not what everyone else is doing, passing on their pathologos, maintaining the cycle of ignorance and violence, the family curse. Not that. The true teaching paradigm. And the great thing about this channel is, you don't have to do it well. Just try your best. Because every mistake is a clue on how you can do it better. Because every mistake is a message being sent through the logos to help you improve. Our job is to do our best to follow that logos as best we can. Which requires a kind of, oh, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Cleaning and lurking, yeah. Feel free to drop in any questions or thoughts that come up. Or if you want to see any of the stuffies, I've got a huge cast of stuffies now. Including this weird creature. Look at this guy. It's some sort of unicorn, but also a bear. It also has a bow. I don't know what that is. He's on my desk as well. I got so many stuffies. Stuffies everywhere. Look at this one. It's a Christmas unicorn from Movie World. Uni-Furby. Yeah, no one actually talks back to me like a Furby does. I don't think. This guy maybe. I have an owl that has a nose like a unicorn a little bit. It's got batteries, but... I need to replace the batteries. Anyway, this is another stuffy. Christmas unicorn. Yeah, it's a Christmas unicorn. I got this one. There's a baby unicorn. Another unicorn. I got lots of unicorns. Yeah, so passing on the teaching seems to be a part of what we're here for. And when we think about what we've been reading in the Meno, which is Socrates saying, hey, by the way, if you are doing this game, if you are doing your best to follow the logos, and everything you do, you are using nous or intellect or ousia as your guide, which is what we just said, using intelligence itself as the paradigm for beauty and justice. So that experience of knowing reality as beauty itself, minding mind, that's called nous, N-O-U-S in Greek. Nous. So if you are coordinated with nous, there's no use running out and charging the army on your own. That's crazy. That's not courage. So your virtues, having a good soul, has to require intelligence and and being coordinated with nous, but in order to go beyond nous and reach the state of being that's beyond even being, the state of self, called phronesis. So that's what we've been reading in the Meno. And if Socrates says if we do our best to do that, then anything we go through, all of our activities on earth that we do, so long as we are trying to do that at all times, do what? Follow the logos. Using what as the model? Nous. To reach what? Phronesis. If we do that, then whatever we go through, we will end up becoming a eudaimonia, a good daemon. Now the daemon, famously, is the voice, the providential guiding voice of self that we have. Socrates talked a lot about his daemon popping in to say, hey, don't do that. It would never tell him what to do, but it would speak up when he was about to do something bad to help him. What does that mean? That means the ultimate state of virtue that we are seeking not only involves us reaching it ourselves, but functioning through it to help others. That's what a daemon does. So the end of our job here isn't something dead or lifeless. It's full of vitality and inspiration and activity. This activity. To be like a daemon. What's the most daemon-like we can be? A midwife. A philosophical midwife. So, therefore, necessarily this being a middle term, being like the bee in the middle, not just getting the teaching of how to reach that from Socrates and Pierre Grimes and this channel, but functioning with it to help other people, passing on the teaching, helping your friends and loved ones, including it in your art, is might be a necessary step, because that's where we're going. The daemon functions. That's why he's called the daemon. It's a functioning of self. So, with all that in mind, we can first of all understand what we are here for, which is neat, because that allows us to be rational while we're here. But also, we have read last time the other kind of analogical paradigm of teaching, the shit one. Which is irrational and stagnant. A is to be as A is to be. It's redundant. Oh yeah, you're hurting me the same way you were hurt by your parents because you're in a position of authority. Because capitalism allows people with money to be in a position of authority over their workers. Or because you've risen to the rank of whatever within the church or the school or whatever, or the government. Boring. Oh, more Nazi stuff, Donald Trump? More tyranny stuff, Putin? More fascist stuff? You pick a leader. More genocide stuff, Netanyahu. More oppression stuff, Kim Jong-il. Whatever. Boring. More pretending to be angry while you shout at people to get them to get distracted from the truth. Jordan Peterson, boring. More Nazi propaganda from Ben Shapiro, boring. Boring. That's A is to be as A is to be. You didn't even have to be here, Jordan. We could have spoken to your dad. You didn't have to be here, Ben Shapiro. We could have spoken to Netanyahu or Hitler. Boring. Or your dad. Or your mum. It's redundant ratio that repeats itself. Therefore, the analogical structure of the way the pathologos functions can be said to exist as a distorted analogy. That is, the pathologos itself is irrational. Understanding a pathologos is as a distorted analogy makes clear that the pathologos is static and undergoes no transformation. So it's even worse than a prejudice where you could actually transform it with new evidence. Leave your small town. Static, no transformation, and is a primitive function. This is the idea of barbarism. When Pierre was fighting Hitler back in the war, walking down that road as he was patrolling against the Nazis in Italy, he realized this is the same road the ancient Romans walked to fight off their barbarians. And he came to the realization that
no one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
in other words, we are still barbarians, which is interesting. Until we remember where we were before we became here, we were born here, we don't know exactly yet. Now, our goal is to remember where we came from, where we're going, and why we're here. But until then, we're in this place. We're here. We don't know how long. But isn't it interesting that we are experiencing what it's like to be a species on the cusp of moving from barbarianism, being primitive, to being rational? We are experiencing primitive evolution, or a primitive stage in evolution. Is that interesting? We have the opportunity to experience both, being primitive and being rational, provided we take this we take our opportunity here and do our job to become rational. Makes sense, right? Look at all our leaders. They don't seem like adults. So we'll say things like, oh, I wish an alien race would come in here and take the guns away from the babies. We're all babies playing in a playpen. But the worst babies have gotten into the gun cabinet and they're running around with guns shooting all these other babies. Why are they in charge? Why are the most juvenile, primitive minds running around shooting people? That's stupid. Surely we know that's stupid. Don't we want to go to the best doctors and go to the best educators and the best chefs? Why don't we want the best thinkers ruling us? Or not ruling us, yeah, kind of. Organizing things so we don't have to worry and we can be safe. Always. Isn't that confusing? If you're the sort of person who has woken up to reason and reflection, ousia and logos, enough to ask that question, I would guess you're probably very confused by how absurd it is. Unless we realize, oh no, you were born into a race that's primitive. Kind of like how we look at, I don't know, dogs. Or how dogs might look at cats. There's a talking dog on Instagram called Bunny. And she has a sibling who's Bunny's a very big dog. And she's one of the earliest speaking dogs that use buttons to speak. Very intelligent dog. wants to know about dreaming, wants to know about life. Bunny's doing her best with the limited amount of words she has to do her job. Wonder about the nature of self and life. Anyway, she's a small dog sibling, and Bunny calls Kenrick a cat and looks down on the cat and insists that Bunny is actually not a dog like her other sibling, but is a human, which is funny. So what? Oh yeah, so that's interesting to realize that, and like might help keep your sanity as well. Oh my God, I just paid all this money for this course, but the person in charge seems to be an idiot and just uses their power to act out their problems, but doesn't see it. Or this authority figure wants to silence logos and reasoning. Or this leader seems to still think war is okay. This is fucked. No, it's not. It's primitive. I mean, it is. It's both. It's fucked too. Yeah, it's primitive. So what? Well, we want to understand that which keeps us chained to our primitive functioning, and that is a distorted analogy of a static, redundant ratio, A is to B, that blocks development, can't improve, can't change. That's primitive. A primitive function that keeps us primitive. It's a repeating ratio, not even an analogy, even though it suggests an analogy of the form, a parent authority is to the child, so the child will be to his universe. In other words, you get the NPC programming put in when you're a kid, and then you're just pushed out into the world, and you repeat your script over and over again. Primitive. Now we say primitive because, hey, that script might have been better than mindlessly wandering out of your cave and getting eaten by a saber-toothed tiger 1,000,000 years ago, or many million years ago. So it's primitive, but may have had a survival benefit back in the caveman days. So clearly on the appearance level, it might seem that this pathologos transmission of a learning should take the form of the classic teacher-student analogy. As the teacher is to the student, so too the student in becoming a teacher can teach and apply that teaching to the universe. So in the highest way, what would that be? Using the terms that we've been learning in our philosophy as well. As we are guided by our daemon and the logos of everything, it's all logos. So too, when we learn to see the logos, appreciate the logos, follow the logos, and wonder about the logos, so too can we share the logos with others and be daemon like ourselves and help them move from the primitive state of being that we are at. We have woken up, fellow watchers, if you're watching in my epoch, we've woken up as people who are NPC programmed to follow the leader. Be it Hitler, if you're German, be it Putin, if you're Russian, be it Netanyahu, if you're Israeli or Jewish, be it Trump, if you're American. The list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. So we're moving from follow the leader, primitive, barbarism, to following the logos. And the insult that they had against the Nazis, against the Germans when they were fighting them as Nazis, they're dogs. They're fiercely loyal without actually deciding who they should be loyal to. Reasoning. That's what a dog does. That's why you can have like police dogs and stuff. Fiercely loyal to who? Never ask. So we don't want to be the bad kind of dog. We want to be the good kind of dog like Bunny that uses whatever level of logos we have, language, reflection, questioning, to ask questions to ourselves, to our daemon, to our dreams, to our friends and loved ones about the true nature of self, reality, where we came from, where we're going, and therefore what we should be doing while we're here. Follow the leader to follow the logos. If Bunny can do it, and Bunny's just a talking dog, you can do it too. The difference between the teaching analogical paradigm and the learning is in the pathologos. Okay, so teaching in the analogical paradigm and the learning, remember it's learning because we come to the conclusion ourselves. We were set up, there's a big production being played, and there are many years before and after of the family way of doing thing. Why is it that mum always takes out the trash? What does that say about women? Why is it that dad always does this thing? Why is it that we go to this church? Why is it that mum's a rabbi or dad's a imam or something? How confusing. It's not confusing when you come to a conclusion that makes sense of things, that saves them as actually being wise and just and beautiful, but make sense of all of the craziness and absurdity and barbaric irrationalism of the family by blaming yourself. Oh, they are all right because my mother is a saint, because you're 4 and you can't think otherwise. Therefore, it's my fault. There's something wrong with me, myself. There's something wrong with my mind because I could never have imagined that this would be that it's good to treat women in this way, or it's good to sabotage my goals. And my thinking, hey, when I spoke up with my logos, that's when I was shut down. That's when I was treated as some sort of evil person by my loved ones. So we take the blame against self, mind, and logos, the things that we are moving into. So we blame the 3 stages of development that we have to move into in order to stay barbaric. To move out of barbarism, following the leader, we have to learn how to think and reason, logos. Follow that through the dialectic to really know our minds, and then use that wisdom of understanding and knowledge to reach the self, recognize the self. Neat? Yes. I think it's neat. Okay, so it's learned. In other words, so those conclusions are all false, of course, but they're conclusions you made, meaning you learned it, meaning you have the power to unlearn it. So we can get out of our problems. In the teaching, so the difference in the learning of the pathologos paradigm compared to the teaching analogical paradigm lies in the differences in the relations, not the terms. Consider what can be said about the relations and how they differ from one another. And there are 8. And the good one, explicit. It's not implied. You're explicit. Just be honest, tell the truth. So like a lot of the grifters, they try and never say anything. Like, maybe I'm Christian, maybe I believe in Trump, or maybe both sides. Anyway, explicit. It must be communicated to the student. Whereas in the pathologos, it's implicit. And the teacher has no knowledge of what's being taught and is not aware of the implications. So people are pretending to be knowers. That's the appeal. It's one of the reasons why there are so many bootlickers for tyrants, because those people think one day I can be a tyrant. I can pretend to have knowledge even though I have no knowledge, because that's what motivates people. That's the NPC programming. Of the pathologos, the teacher must have knowledge of what's being taught, The teacher can be questioned and tested. Number 3, in the pathologos, can't be questioned or tested. 5, the teaching can be applied in some situations successfully. It's got to work. This isn't just a belief. Notice, without this step in beliefs or pathologos, how can you demonstrate? How can you show you're a true believer? Well, one of the ways is by hurting people from other religions, hurting people from other clans. You can't confirm beliefs. You can confirm understanding. So how do you prove you're a good Christian? How about beating up a Protestant in front of mum and dad? Does that make sense of the in-group, out-group mentality of human beings at the level of belief and not understanding? Anyway, in real teaching, you can apply it and test it. Reach success. The conclusions drawn from the transmission seen, the teaching, have been explicitly taught and can be accepted as true by the learner, whereas in the pathologos, the conclusions drawn from the transmission have not been expressly taught, but are assumed to be true by the believer. Number 7, in teaching, the teacher in the act of teaching does not have to appear as a knower, sincere, caring, or possessing any particular virtue. It's not about people or authority or how you look, or how big your pope hat is, or how fancy your rabbi whatever is, or how ornate your Muslim whatever is, or your Protestant whatever. It's not about appearances. Whereas the pathologos, number 5, the act of transmission, the authority figure has to appear as a knower, sincere, caring, and possessing virtue. Ooh, welcome, FIFA Fillers. Welcome, FIFA. In real teaching, the transmission is public and a repeatable event. Whereas in our pathologos, it's always private, behind closed doors, within the house. But it's also an unusual and rare event. I've never seen mum actually talk in this way. I've never seen dad so confident and powerful when he's asserting this thing. I've never seen mum yell like that. This is a rare event. This is a teaching. Look how caring she must be. Right? Whereas teaching, it's not. You get called out for that shit if a teacher tries it. And it's public. Also in a pathologos, so far as the pathologos is believed, the believer cannot relate the transmission to its inception or origin. So the teacher playing out this barbaric, irrational, distorted ratio, distorted analogy, can't relate. They're not aware that they're just doing the same shit that happened to them. They don't know the origin. They don't know why they're crushing people in this kind of way. They don't know why they're yelling in this kind of way. They haven't done midwifery to find the origin of their unsuspected false beliefs about self and reality and what's good. Thus, the importance of midwifery. At the start of the stream today, I encourage you to make a conclusion. If it's true that human beings are simply here to go from pathologos to logos, if that's the human journey, and everything else is just some sort of mythologizing of that, to go from barbarism to rational and mature human beings, to go from follow the leader to follow the logos, and philosophical midwifery is the only thing that can do that, because it's simply the art that is applied to that, Just like the art of car mechanics is the only thing that can fix your car. Not because it's a side that you're born into or you're picking a team or God says so. It's just the name given to the skill and art applied to car engines. Same thing with flying a plane or medicine. So too, the activity or the art and skill applied to solving human problems, doing our job, moving from barbarism to intelligence, discovering the nature of self, the reason you're here, and preparing for where you're going next. The art and skill is midwifery, philosophical midwifery. It's written up there, see? So the conclusions you came to, if that's the case, what would you say? Here's where you can apply that conclusion. Notice the pathologos prevents conclusions because the teaching is not explicit. Because you can't test it, you can't question it. It's stagnant. But here you can make conclusions. For instance, you might say, well, if that's the case, the conclusion is the very first thing you learn at school in grade 1 is midwifery. The very first thing you do every morning is midwifery or dream analysis along with midwifery. A sane society would meet everyone's material conditions so that we have this time and space to do midwifery. Midwifery should be obligation for anyone in positions of leadership. Any of these conclusions. Because if you don't, you have number 6. The believer cannot relate the transmission to the origin. They don't know where they're getting this crap from. They think they're being a good teacher, or good boss, or good parent. They're wrong. Because they don't know where they got it from. And
the problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into.
Well said, Oracle. And also, the other thing about the pathologos, what is learned is irreconcilable with one's significant goals. That's the fundamental reason why all this energy and effort and human experience is focused on this singular thing and not all the infinite things we could be doing. That's why human beings are doing the barbarism dance, acting like barbarians, and not becoming mages and wizards and warlocks and druids and all these sorts of other things we can do. Because it functions specifically to block you from your most significant goals. Whereas this other thing can apply to anything. You can learn all sorts of things. But this kind of faux learning, pathologos paradigm, is to block you from your purpose, from your happiness, from your fulfillment, from your success. Because hey, what kind of a follower can you be if you've surpassed everyone in that cave of ignorance? You'll be a pretty shit follower if you are successful and intelligent and can think for yourself. However, you might make a wonderful leader. That's the difference. And we need leaders like that. So stay in it. Stay in the game. Thus, the difference between these two analogies lies in the meaning of the relations between the term. The analogies function in different ways, for in the classic teaching analogy, the teaching becomes a way to the successful application of the learning, while in the pathologos, it becomes the paradigm for failure. Success v. failure. Now this is one of the cool things about understanding in the logos. It often is reduced to two fundamental terms that have a kind of relationship. So we talk about one of the things midwifery allows us to do is to see reality as fundamentally rational, or not just rational, but knowable. You can actually know the answers to these questions. You don't have to believe someone or wait till you die. You can actually experience it and know it. So that those two together means intelligible, but also caring. Now, the care comes through the logos, which means we need the dialectic to unpack it or learn the language. Imagine the universe is helping you but speaking French. Well, you'd want to learn French pretty quick smart. Like your football coach, you've just been scouted and you're being paid $1 million a game by some football team in Europe, by Barcelona or something. But the coach is speaking Italian. $1 million a game, you'd learn Italian pretty quickly. Now imagine that, but times 1 million. That's the kind of coaching or support or guidance that you are getting at every moment from your daemon and from reality itself. The language is not Italian, it's the dialectic, the self-logos language. So what? Well, yeah, what? So what? Oh yes, 2 things. Intelligible and caring. Or 2 things. Humans are on the cusp of barbarism and intelligence, or Homo sapiens, man the thinker. And we would say, let's go one step further, Homo ludens, man the player, with this being the noblest game. From pathologos to logos. Today we've been talking about states of mind and understanding. What does that mean? That all of these fundamental things that are most interesting and significant, once understood with this level of, clarity, level of interest and wonder, reduces to 2 terms. And whether or not we are successful seems to be how those 2 terms relate to each other. How are you doing relating to how is your pathologos and logos relating to each other? Are you following the logos? Does your pathologos come up? Do you, when your pathologos come up, do you use your words to berate yourself? Oh, I should never have made that mistake. Me making this mistake just proves that they were right when they said I was X, Y, and Z. That's a bad way of relating your logos to pathologos. Now, the best way we just said, if your logos relates to the pathologos in a curious, friendly, dialectical way, you can use the logos to get the messages from your pathologos to get the clues you need to solve the puzzle you're here to solve. So it's the same 2 terms, but they're relating to each other differently. Isn't that interesting? Now we said what we're learning is the dialectic. Dialectic is 2, dia, self and other. 2 terms. The fundamental paradigm of everything intelligible, of intelligibility itself, reduces down to the dialectic, or 2 terms. Excuse me. Is that interesting? Now, what if it's the same 2 terms, but the way they relate to each other is different? Maybe they're not together like logos and providence, but they're at odds. Or one destroys the other. Now, here is a little bit of fun for philosophy. The Parmenides has 9 different hypotheses that covers all possible ways of thinking, all possible views of self and reality, and all possible stages of feeling you can be in. Do you feel completely alone and disconnected from everyone? Well, maybe you're in the 5th hypothesis. Maybe you don't even think you're real. Maybe nothing is real. Everything is empty and meaningless. Now you're in the 9th. Well, okay, maybe you've reasoned about the state of mind you're in and how sad you're feeling. And you realize, well, actually there is something because there's a physical world, but that's it. Oh, you're in the 8th. Now, what's interesting about all of these different stages is you can hierarchically arrange them from true to false or happiness to sadness, and therefore have the stages of development that individuals, species, wherever they are, including humans, are going through. You have the paradigm for development, or the paradigm for spirituality or learning. Now, what's really cool is when Socrates, awesome. What's really cool is when Parmenides outlines it, he says the same thing over and over again, using the same logos. So if you read the Parmenides, and we've read the first hypothesis together, and that's really cool, you can go through that, and there's a link on YouTube below. We started the second, but it got a bit intense, so we paused so we could read some other things and do some midwifery before we get back into the Parmenides and continue with the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 9th, all the way through. We did the first one. Because it's the most important, it's the self we're after. It's Parmenides' view of himself from himself using the self logos. But the second hypothesis uses the same terms, but different relations. So, Parmenides talks about the one self as being a kind of whole that doesn't have any parts. So if you understand a whole to be something which has all its parts, so it's whole, it's not missing anything, then that's not the whole that the self is, because the self doesn't have parts. By the way, it's unlimited, it's infinite. But normally when we think of things that are infinite, like numbers, it's a series of limits. 1, 2, 3, 4. Space is infinite, but there's points in space. So if you think infinite is a never-ending series of limits, that's not the infinite that the self is, because it's an infinite. So the two terms, the pairs, not whole and part, infinite and finite. The way these two terms relate to each other indicate what level you're on. So the self is a kind of infinite that's not infinite. Because if infinite is defined by a series of limits, and the self has no limits, it can't be that. So people often think of the first hypothesis as just negatives. He's just making a list of qualities that the self isn't. The true self, the one self, isn't what we're after. It's not a whole, it's not parts, it's not infinite, it's not limited. That's where most people start. But because we've been reading it ourselves, we can see, oh no, there's more to it than that. It's not just a series of negatives. It's a series of pairs of two terms. Whole, part, same, different, infinite, limit. What are the other ones? Like, unlike, in time, at a time. There are 6 big categories, or 12, like the 12 Olympian gods. And there are a few subsets like, I won't get into the first hypothesis, but there are 6 big pairs and a couple of more that are a bit higher and then a couple of more that are a bit lower, but there are 6, meaning 12. So you could wonder about the 12 Olympian gods. And anyway, he said, I'm using the same logos to talk about not the one self, but the first creation of the one self, reality itself, or pure being. Because pure being had to come from somewhere. That's the second hypothesis. The greatest experience, mind minding mind. But he uses the exact same terms to describe it. How can two things that are fundamentally different, the greatest possible experience and that which transcends even experience, how can you use the same words, terms to describe both? If they are, and here's a fun word, incommensurate. 2 different levels. Incommensurate means a whole different world. Like you can say, how many liters of the marathon did you run? Doesn't make sense. How many miles did I run? But liters and miles are incommensurate, different worlds. How many hours do you want for lunch? Doesn't make sense. No, well, you can say that. How many seconds did you eat on your sandwich? Doesn't make sense. It's incommensurate. So it's a puzzle. Here is how it works. Terms are the same, the relations differ. So if you're experiencing the greatest possible experience, you are experiencing all of the limits in space, every point in time and space. So some people who have experience that talk about experiencing all of evolution all at once, or eternity, all of space and time all at once. This is the object of knowledge. This is the second hypothesis. Notice, infinity, yes, it's everything. But in union with, so the highest infinity, along with the highest limits. The greatest whole, including all of the parts. It's the second hypothesis. And you can see why, if people have had that experience, they would conclude, well, this is it. Mind recognized it. I knew myself. I remembered myself. And it was everything. And by definition, it's the greatest experience. Therefore, I have reached complete enlightenment. This is the case for many spiritual traditions, including Taoism. But what they lack is the logos. So, if you look at those kinds of traditions, you might recognize some of the aspects of the distorted teaching paradigm. Hey, are some of the spiritual traditions implicit? Not said? When you go to the Buddha, the Taoist or Buddhist guru and you ask a question, do they say, here's a trick question, or what is the sound of one hand clap? They don't. It's all puzzles and avoiding logos. Can you ask questions? Normally not. They'll tell you to shut up and sit on the mat. Do they often have to appear wise and knowing? Often they're qualified as gurus and they wear an orange robe or shave their head. So you can see aspects of the pathologos redundant teaching model seeping in to them pretending or trying their best maybe to play the real one, but falling short because they lack the logos. If they lack the logo, if they have the logos, they would come to this realization we are coming to now. And fundamentally, you can reduce things down to, once you see them clearly, 2 fundamental terms, and you can express differences or levels of development in how they relate to each other. That's the same self logos that Parmenides was using. One more example. The 9th, the very last hypothesis of Parmenides is nihilism. which says nothing exists. There is no whole, but there is also no parts. Same two terms, but a rejection of both. There's a hypothesis where there is a war between the two. Do you know people who think that reality is fundamentally a battleground between the forces of good and the forces of evil? The angels of heaven and the heathens who don't accept whatever religion? Yes. Are these people doing their best to usher forth Armageddon so that Jesus can come back? Yes. Are they using it to justify genocide? Yes. Are we able to identify that way of thinking within the self-logos, within the paradigm of the 9 hypotheses of Parmenides by saying, hey, same two terms as all the other ones, except you think they're at odds? God versus devil, good versus evil. Interesting. Are these people ever going to be able to solve problems? No. No logos at that level. So they'll be confused when you say, hey, hang on a second. All problems are fundamentally caused by a false belief within our soul. You never have to kill anyone if you want to solve problems. All you have to do is help create the conditions for midwifery and philosophy. That's it. They'll be confused because they're at that level of 7th. Because you can't reason with evil. Evil is an invented nonsense idea of something that wants bad things, which is absurd. By definition, the good means that which you seek. And we all seek the good because good brings benefit. This is what the word means. You don't want to eat a bad sandwich and throw up for 3 days. No one does. Which is why people in the 7th hypothesis, or fascists or dictators and stuff, have to use the language of helping people. Oh, if we have all the money, we're helping you because it'll trickle down, see? So they fundamentally misuse language or lie to give the imitation of good and benefit while actually doing what they really want to do, bad and harm. Because they're stuck in ignorance. Or the 7th hypothesis. Which is neat. Because understanding everything comes down to 2 things. And how they relate. Is that neat? I think it's neat. By the way, we have to thank Pierre Grimes and Juan Balboa, who translated the Parmenides into the actual Greek, into actual words that reflect the Greek. So we can have, we've only been able to realize this recently because we've only had the good translations recently and we've had midwifery recently. The translator has to go through to be able to see things as they are. Otherwise, the translator will project all his bullshit onto the text. Thankfully, Pierre helped the translator, Juan Balboa, learn to read and think critically, allowing him to pass on, in the good teaching paradigm, the same kinds of teachings that he benefited through his work, through his art, to us. So as Pierre Grimes is to Juan Balboa, our fantastic translator, cheer for him. So too is Juan helping us by providing free, by the way, the material with the real Greek that we can look up and the real translations above it. And he even color codes key terms. So. Anyway, I think that's neat. that we can reduce it to two terms fundamentally so often. Now, and we have another pair of terms. By the way, we haven't gone back to our image of what it means to be a philosopher, because as we're learning that, we're also learning what real philosophy is, and we talk about the true hero, or the true hero's journey.
You're a wizard, Harry.
And how it's like being a wizard and a Sherlock Holmes. So if you can think of if anyone's in chat, of a name that would incorporate Sherlock Holmes with like some like wizard or fantasy RPG, like Sherlock Potter, but better than Sherlock Potter, that's what we need, because we are learning how to be a philosopher as well. See, here we are, Sherlock Holmes, and this is us with our wizard's hat. Notice. Women. Right, so we talk about seeking excellence and truth fundamentally, reflecting on ourselves, that's ousia, the state of aporia from the Meno, being open, curious, puzzled, wondering, stung state of mind, and not the certain, I'm willing to kill for my beliefs to prove to mummy and daddy that I'm a good Catholic, or whatever that's pathologos crap. The desire to discover the truth about oneself and reality. And as we go, reading the Logos, which is personified by Apollo, reflecting to piece it together. So you've got to test it in our experience. That's Aphrodite, and Apollo and Aphrodite go together. Another pair of two. But also what we're doing is we're looking for, when we discover pairs of two like that, see, Sherlock Gnomes is good. And I think you could make a case for Sherlock Gnomes because in World of Warcraft, one of the greatest fantasy RPG games ever, there is that race of gnomes. And there is that, I don't know if you played World of Warcraft, but I did back in the day. Gnomeragon? But I think Sherlock Gnomes has already been used by some film, from 3 years ago maybe. Horde Alliance, the Alliance. Gnomeragon is quite near Ironforge, so it's like one of the first dungeons a lot of people experience. Oh no, Dead Mines before that. Yeah, me too. It's too dangerous. It's too good. I don't know what it's like now, but StarCraft, interesting. How did you get into quick twitch? I saw those hardcore StarCraft players that have all the hotkeys and they're flicking around really fast. Whereas World of Warcraft is more mellow and slow moving, and you have the atmosphere. It's a fantastic game. Dangerously fantastic. Now, we've been talking about using our art or using our understanding. Zerg Rush. I've heard about the Zergs. Now, if we could add into something like StarCraft or World of Warcraft, the Logos, so that your development isn't being mightier only, but everything has its correlation to what we develop actually, then you could use it as a teaching mechanism. And I think it will be far more successful, because I think the two major problems with these games are, number one, when you reach the end, you feel empty because you haven't walked away with something. People's lives are like that. People at the end of their lives might feel empty because they spent their lives doing physical things. Money, fame, or just meeting their physical needs. And they haven't learnt something they can take with them into the next dimension, which has to be some sort of skill, which is universal and true forever, which is the logos, or the art that we're learning, but also a nature of our soul. So this way of being that we develop as we learn this skill, according to Socrates, is the skill and the nurture that you can take with you. So similarly, if the logos or the skill and nurture is missing from a video game, people will end up feeling empty too. And the second problem is, well, it's addictive and I'm not getting anything out of it. But if it was helping you explore your pathologos or the logos, we have a winner. You must construct additional dialectics with logos. You must construct additional pylons. Yes. 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 Still learning if I got terminology wrong. Yes, that's the game. That's the game. That's the game. Try it out. But this is another thing. The significance about the daemon guiding us and also the dreams that it creates to help us is that's what you got to do. Just try your best to use the logos. To look for the logos, look for patterns everywhere. Do you find certain key terms reflecting? Did that person at the shop say that word? And then the person at the bus stop said it again. Certain characters seem to come into your life until you realize what they're here to tell you. Not consciously, they don't know they're doing it, but the logos. So looking for patterns. And applying the logos as best you can. See, learning the logos in our reading, Apollo. Applying it by looking for patterns and seeking your highest goals is Aphrodite. But the daemon, as you do that, of course you're going to miss the mark in some level because you can keep learning and learning and learning, and your dreams and your midwife talks can illuminate where you missed the mark so you can correct your aim. By the way, the Greek word for that is aporia. I think it's aporia. No. Aporia is the open, this one here. Raising Maggie's drawers. Yeah, so you're doing great, yeah. And if you are applying the terminology wrong, your conversations, your dreams, and your midwifery will help you see so you can adjust your aim. Amartya. There are no mistakes, your aim is off. Which is why Apollo was an archer. The logos has a good aim. By the way, the word amartya is mistranslated on purpose within Christianity as the word sin, which reflects the pathologos, because the pathologos does the game of, oh, you missed the mark. It's an excuse to make you suffer. You are the reason why you made a mistake. It's because you are bad, and there's no way of changing that. All you can do is feel bad, and I get to make you feel bad by inflicting the suffering or the violence. That's called punishment, and why punishment is fucked. And the word sin, instead of missing the mark, can explain the fundamental dynamic between oppression and true learning with just one word. One word, amartya. Two, again, here's another two definitions. Is it missing the mark? Or is it proof that you're an evil, nasty child? And you should feel bad and go to confession every week and tell the priest how bad you are, and he will give you 10 Hail Marys. And then as you walk out of the church, you look up at Jesus, dead on that cross. It's your fault. He died for your sins. See? By the way, some of those people know that they're doing it. They know that they've been lying to Christians for a long time. That's the word amartya. But yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, yeah, anyway. I'm very happy that you are using what you are seeing of the logos so far and applying it creatively. That makes me very happy. Because it means there has been some benefit from the work that I've been doing in doing this stream. So I'm very happy. So good for you. And as we go, we realize we find these pairs of twos, whether it be sin versus missing the mark. By the way, missing Amartya, Pierre Grimes told us a story about how when he was in the army fighting Nazis, they called it raising Maggie's drawers. Now, keep in mind, Pierre died last year when he was like 99, so... So when you're shooting or firing in the range and you miss a target far away, the person judging will raise a white flag to say you've missed the mark, like adjust your aim. That's it, just adjust your aim. Look more for logos. And so this raising of the white flag looked like someone was raising some white panties. And so that's raising Maggie's drawers. I guess it was funny back then. I guess this was a joke back in the army days, back in those times. So we look for these pairs. So we've got a bunch of pairs that you can put into your skill tree in your inventory as a Sherlock or Sherlock Gnomes. Now I want like wizard or something, because we want to be Harry Potter or Luke Skywalker. Anyway, then our skill tree, like, oh, here is a pair of things, logos and pathologos. Here is a pair of things, barbarism versus intelligence. Or here's a pair of things, the teaching model, the teaching paradigm analogy, and the distorted pathologos analogy. Put them in your inventory, in your twos skill tree. Why? Because once you've got a bunch, you can have a fun game of, hang on a second, can I use this one to understand this one? Can I use my lightning attack along with my fire attack to create a super attack that has fire and lightning combined? Call it Hellstorm. No, wait. Call it Zeus's fireball or something. Now, that's a metaphor to talk about what would happen if... What have we got? We've got pathologos and logos on this one. We've got this one, barbarism versus rational or intelligent. And we've got the teaching analogy paradigm and the pathologos distorted paradigm. Can you use this to gain insight into this? Can you use your ice beam along with your lightning to zap someone that also gives them a slow effect? Can you understand the movement from barbarism to intelligence by the movement from pathologos to logos? Oh, holy shit, you can. We've just gained an insight along with understanding, because we have the map, the blueprints from our skill tree. So we've got a new insight and understanding of our purpose as humans to move from barbarism to rationality, simply by linking it to that one and asking this question: how does the relationship between pathologos and logos illuminate that? Oh, so therefore, our journey of moving from barbarism to intelligence is nothing other than from pathologos to logos. But hang on a second, we've got another skill tree. Can we add this and make a lightning and fire and ice mega super blast? Sounds like something you'd do in Kingdom Hearts or something, or maybe Final Fantasy. What's the other one? Okay. So is the movement from barbarism to intelligence or pathologos to logos, can we understand that even better with this other one? The movement from the pathologos distorted paradigm to the teaching analogical paradigm? We can!
Wow.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win, but with a whole bunch of them. Kingdom Hearts plot is
A win-win-win-win-win.
a win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win. Kingdom Hearts plot is convoluted. I was thinking of Star Wars pun. Yeah, I guess if you've leveled up your force beam, but you've also leveled up your lightsaber weaponship, so you can combine them together and use the force to direct your lightsaber and throw your lightsaber at your enemy and chop off their head, and then use your force to bring your lightsaber back. That's the equivalent of this. This is why we look for patterns. By the way, looking for patterns is how we discover the logos. Which is interesting because what we are doing as human beings is looking to discover the logos and then following it. Follow the leader to follow the logos. Oh, another pair. So what you can do is pull out your notebook app or whatever you're using to create your notes, and you can add another one onto your skill tree. That other, I forgot what I said, but I said two things. Yeah. So this is, notice, this isn't having the answers, it's looking for patterns. It isn't pretending you're right at all times to avoid punishment, it's seeking truth at all times. It's questions. It's not firm answers, they are hypotheses. You carry your questions with you. These are your weapons. You polish up your sword, you upgrade your sword. You carry your sword, but also you carry your possible conclusions. Your conclusions you get through your dialectics. Notice, they're just ifs. Until you verify your ifs by actually experiencing the thing. Experiencing mind itself. And then come back to us here and let us know, hey, I experienced the brilliant light of being, and confirm my hypothesis that beauty exists as an aspect of knowable reality. And we will say, how'd you get there? Well, first we'll say, tell me about it. Which would benefit us because we are also contemplating your experience, which is imagination, which is part of it, preparing our minds to get there. It benefits you because you're remembering it. So there's our state of mind, Aphrodite. But also you are reflecting on it to try and use the words you've gotten from midwifery and philosophy to understand it. That's Apollo. So you're preparing yourself to experience it again by remembering it and understanding it, which benefits you and benefits us.
It's a win-win.
That's the game. And we're learning it. Because other people don't teach us that. Because we happen to be around at that turning point of humanity where we have a choice to transition. Currently, there are no teachers of this. Or maybe one or two here or there. Well, we are learning it, but apart from that, there aren't a lot of streams like what we're doing. Which is interesting. You're alive at the turning point. We either make the move or we don't. And hey, maybe that's why you're here, to help this. So, worth reflecting on to understand what we are doing and how real philosophy differs from the barbaric version that we are taught currently in our society. which is interesting because we are learning something that's the opposite from what people who are the experts claim it is. And of course it is. If philosophy is what solves problems and the people are in charge because people have problems and can't think for themselves and so allow themselves to be dominated by authority figures that are sick and ignorant like their parents, then of course those people who think they're winning will prevent us from learning what we need to learn to free ourselves from our bondage. Of course, that's what it means to be barbaric. So, we have to remind ourselves that and make it clear to our friends when we invite them to play the very game they are here to play. Hey, you know what you're here for? What? That's the point. Like, answer that question. How do I do that? It's called philosophy. Nah, I did a philosophy course at college. Bullshit. They tried to make me read these long books.
Have you read Brand at all? Have you read Nagel? What about Scanlon? Have you read Scanlon or Scruton or Edmund Burke? Have you read C.S. Lewis? Have you read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Have you read Immanuel Kant? So you know Flicht.
What has this got to do with Bob's Burgers?
Do you practice self-love in a Kantian sense? Do you masturbate to Kant? Have you seen Infinity Wars? Have you even seen Age of Ultron?
So I think that's what philosophy is. Gatekeeping, big words used to debate and defend your beliefs. The exact opposite. Small words. I mean, there are some fun words that we use. We have to learn new words like nous, enuncia, and logos. Not to gatekeep, but to invite everyone. You're doing it anyway. The difference is the pathologos is controlling your dialectic, or you are. Or not you. The self, or the logos is. Sher Walker Holmes. Who's Walker? Oh, those big ice walkers. Sherlock Backus. Sherlock Holmes. Ooh, Sherlock Holmes is close. Sherlock. Blue Lock Holmes? No, that's nothing. I do like Blue Lock though. Have you seen Blue Lock? I wish I had Blue Lock when I was younger playing soccer. Blue Lock Holmes. Blue Lock is awesome. Blue Lock's like if anime wasn't about fighting but was about soccer. And what's interesting is, I think the appeal to that is the certain experiences that you have while playing sport of a high level or of a transcendent level. Without philosophy, you can't talk about it. And you can't recognize, holy crap, I was in a kind of enlightenment state. And I played soccer the best I've ever played in my life. Like in Blue Lock. Oh, Prince of Tennis. I haven't seen that. But without a language, you miss it, you don't get back to it. It's all a big confusing mess. Blue Lock is kind of halfway between current world, where we don't have a language to understand the important states of mind while playing sport, and actual philosophy, understanding it and appreciating it and getting into it more. Blue Lock's in the middle by talking about it in reference to energy blasts or synergies or unlocking your potential and going Super Saiyan. So, back to the book. So what? Well, so we talked about seeing things as fundamentally two, and when we discover that, making a note so you can use it to have insight about other things. But also the fact that this also applies to the Parmenides. If you take all of the fundamental terms, what we call the selfers, like beauty itself, same itself, different itself, infinite itself, justice itself. Actually, let's take out beauty and justice. Let's just use the Parmenides, same and different. Take all those terms. It's the same terms in every level, only the relations are different. For example, the third hypothesis, that we are moving into the next stage from barbarism to rationality, is the third hypothesis, which has the logos and providence. So it's a kind of difference between the whole and you as the part, the whole soul and the individual soul, the whole and the part. They are connected, and they're connected providentially and intelligibly. So same words as the second, same words as the first, but different relationship. It's one and then the other. So analogy is time. Like imagine you're in a movie theater. You're looking at a screen and it looks like the people are moving. They're not moving. There's a scene and then a gap and then a new scene and then a gap 32 times a second, and it looks like movement. That's the third hypothesis. To create the movement of our physical world, every split second it's destroyed and recreated in a way that's consistent and rational, in a way that helps you better yourself, because the next moment isn't my stuffy doesn't become blue and then become red again. So still the same terms, but one and then the other. Whereas the second, it's both at once. So I'm not going to go too much into that, but that's the whole premise. No, you're not derailing. And here it's interesting because we say the analogies, the difference between them lies in the meaning of the relations. Same idea. These analogies then function in different ways. For, in the classic teaching analogy, the teaching becomes a way to the successful application of the learning, while in the pathologos analogy, it becomes the paradigm for failure. Success or failure. Two terms. How are you going to relate to them? Does your success come in opposition to failure? In other words, do you win by others losing? Like capitalists think? Like fascists think? Like people trying to hoard physical resources think? Like Trump and Putin think? Or are you in this game where they are tied in a providential way because you use your success in mastering the logos to understand your failures and gain the messages from it as clues to solve your problem, making even your failures beneficial so long as there is a understandable, loving, caring relationship between successes and failures. So that's me playing around with the different ways of relating between the two terms. These two analogies move in the same kind of space and time. The striving for a significant goal uses the teaching paradigm, but unknown to the believer is replaced by the pathologos analogy and becomes the paradigm for failure. You think you're doing the teaching one, pathologos comes in, takes over. One paradigm replaces the other. There is no awareness of the transmission from one to the other. You don't know when you've flipped. I've gone from learning to being stuck in the same repeating state of mind. And, true to its form, the pathologos analogy is forgotten by the believer in the wave of destructive amnesia, which is the hallmark of the pathologos. Amnesia. You forget that you've done this before. These analogies function at the same time in opposite directions. One aims towards the future, where the other one, the past. It's another two. one aims towards the future, one conserves the past. Conservatives. The way these analogies function suggests there is a similarity between them and a wave phenomena, because in wave theory, the principle of imposition states that when waves impact in the same time and space, there is a destructive interference pattern, a cancellation of the resulting wave. One goes this way, and they cancel each other out. The teaching paradigm is expressed most simply through the mean analogy and is often called the Dharma transmission analogy. Dharma means spiritual teaching. The transmission of a teaching through successive persons can be represented through this analogy. One of the most thoughtful presentations of this transmission is found in Plato's Symposium.
It's a win-win.
There we find Socrates, his teacher Diotima, and Agathon exploring the nature of love. Oh. Ooh. If we follow how Plato unfolds the way each of them functions, we can see the transmission of a teaching, Dharma, from Diotima to Socrates and from Socrates to Agathon. We represent the relations between them in the following table. Teacher is to student, as Diotima is to Socrates, as Socrates is to Agathon. Right, and I just said that. Okay, did what I said. In this analogy, the highest term, Diotima, has the most unitary grasp of the teaching about love, so much so that she personifies it. She personifies that very teaching within herself. Or she has nurtured her skill into her soul sufficiently that she has become a walking personification of love. Super important, because if there's anything we're here to do, it has to go with us, with our soul, after our physical incarnation. And by the way, and therefore showing us the meaning of all people. Everyone is meaningful. In many ways, including every person is an expression of a certain configuration of mind relative to the imposition of pathologos over logos. So everyone is a kind of personification of their kind of problem. There are certain people who seem to be caricatures. So corrupt, it's comical, Donald Trump. So gross and base and stuck in victim mentality like Ethan Klein, for example, as a streamer. So comically representing I don't want to say depravity. What would you call it? I'm thinking of Asmongold. Mindlessness? Or... yeah, I don't know what the word would be. Anyway, everyone is a kind of personification of the dialectic that they're in, allowing us to understand them and learn from them. Everyone's meaningful. And they're not right, but we can still benefit from learning about what they personify. And how difficult it is for them to get out of their problem. So, that's a bit of an aside. But she is a personification of the teaching of love. The entire order of terms becomes... excuse me. unified as the teaching proceeds through the other terms, while she is in no way diminished. So an overflowing that doesn't diminish the source. The sun provides all the nurture and what do you call it? The energy for life on this planet, while in no way being diminished itself. So, therefore, indicates a kind of transcendence, which again is you have to move to higher levels. Such that you're not diminished by people of lower levels sharing. So the more we share in the Logos isn't diminished. Whereas the fundamental issue about disgusting capitalism that we're stuck in is, you can't have billionaires unless other people suffer. We could all be millionaires, that'd be lovely, or we could have billionaires. Someone's success is diminished if other people have success. Is that way of thinking that's wrong and sick, and underlies hoarding and wealth inequality and the people who defend it. So this kind of state of being is not diminished by people sharing in it. The more, the merrier, because
it's a win-win.
It's a win-win. She remains complete in herself. In the middle role, or the mean role, Socrates as student and teacher both receives a teaching and gives or passes it on to another. And in that role, he becomes a mediator, linking the whole series together with himself as the mean between the extremes. Now that's a cool expression. Mean between the extremes. That sounds like a Eminem line. Mean between the extremes. I have a dream for ice cream. And it got stuck in my spleen. You know what? And then I became a mean between the extremes when I peed a stream of ice cream out my peen. That's it. I think that's the take. Can you record that? Put a fat beat behind it and release it on Spotify, please. Thank you. Yeah. The stream of ice cream out my peen. Oh, dear Lord. Okay. Still fire. What do you call bars? Spitting bars out here. So, Socrates passes it on, becomes a mean between the extremes. Since the extremes, thank you, since the extremes converge on a center. As he transmits what he has received, he draws up the potentiality of the extreme, agathon, producing a common character over the whole series. So, a common character over the whole series, which is interesting, because in this kind of rational, true, universally true system, we can be a mean between the extremes and bring up the potential of every single human being, creating a common character or a shared way of being that can unite humanity. A way of being of philosophy, following the Logos, which is what it means to be rational and enter the human race. From barbarians, which is where we are right now. So what we're doing is understanding how, from where the unifying way of being shall come. It's this. It's understanding analogy. So the last term, agathon, to the degree he is able, produces a likeness, And in that moment, he reverts on the original principle, the teaching of Diotima. And earlier today, we were talking about the first and final term in our quest, which is the self. So the more we're able to share in the logos, the more we become like the daemon and like the self. And also, the more we read the text in this kind of precise way, and also looking for dialectics, the more we become like the author. So to read without interpretation creates a likeness that reverts us up towards the original principle, the mind of Pierre, which is the mind of someone who has mastered the logos, which is what we're aiming for. Similarly, but with Socrates, when we do that. Agathon is, so Agathon, to the degree he is able, produces a likeness, and in that moment he reverts upon the original principle, the teaching of Diotima. Agathon is exhibiting the potential that proceeded from Diotima, the primary term, and in that there is a reversion upon the principle of procession. This one's a bit tricky. No, it's not. Oh, okay. What I think is meant here is he reverts upon the principle of this procession, not procession itself. I mean, unless Diotima also is a kind of personification not just of love, but of the idea of procession. If the case can be made that in the symposium, Socrates is teaching us about the mean analogy, and I think that case is pretty good, it's kind of the whole thing, then also you can see the symposium is not just about love, which it is, the yoga of love. How can you use the most fundamental motivating impulse of our soul, our desire to unite as much as possible with what we consider beautiful, love? How can we use that desire of love to propel our soul to what it really seeks, union eternally with beauty itself, or mind knowing mind? But also, it's showing us the idea of mean and procession. In the beginning of Socrates' speech, Socrates and Agathon are described as sharing the same mistaken views about love and wisdom. The views they have are mistaken, since they would not allow one to reach the truth about love and beauty. Which is interesting. So there's our standard. How do you know that isn't beauty in the eye of the beholder? Who are you to say my view of love and wisdom is wrong? Easy. Does it allow you to reach truth? In how we have been defining wisdom as both the understanding and the direct experience confirming your understanding. Does it also allow you to function as a mean, because that's important too, to pass on the teaching? If not, you're wrong. Or rather, that belief is wrong. On discovering his ignorance, Agathon quit the search. So after hearing you're wrong, don't quit. But Socrates continued the inquiry to learn the right opinions about love. That's why we read Socrates. Socrates gained understanding when he discovered the reasons why they're called right opinions. That's why we read in this careful way, and we review what we've read, and we apply it, Aphrodite, and we try and structure the terms according to hierarchies and according to the dialectic. That's understanding. Thus, Socrates moves from ignorance to right opinion, goes on to reach understanding, and if he is successful in his quest, he may move on to knowledge. There you go. why it's not only the paradigm of teaching, it's also the paradigm of all teaching, including spiritual teaching. So it's also spiritual development as well as intellectual development. Isn't that neat? I think it's neat. I think it's really neat. 4. In being initiated into the steps leading to that blessed vision. Oh, you think it's neat too. So we are in agreement. And we will take arms against anyone who says it's not neat. That there is a simple way of understanding education, learning, and spirituality that everyone can share in. If other people get on board, then we are functioning as a mean, like Socrates, inviting people into the possession of humanity to become humans, real humans, which adds a Homo sapien, man the thinker, which adds a common term throughout the whole common character throughout the whole series. Unite humanity together in a single activity of following the logos. I think it's neat. And I'll fight anyone who says otherwise. I'm joking, of course. So, being initiated into the steps. So it's not like other spiritual traditions where it's like, roll the dice. Sweep up at the ashram for 40 years and maybe you get lucky and have an experience. Even then, there's no understanding. Ooh. But no, it's not like that. There are actually steps. It doesn't have to be woo or airy-fairy or anything goes or whatever the grifters use to sell their plan. Just steps you can read in the symposium leading to the blessed vision of beauty itself. Socrates, capital B, not a beautiful thing, but the noun beauty, not the adjective. Socrates may confirm inexperience and understanding of what Diotima shared with him, and so he may become qualified to teach others. To teach those who in turn may transmit the teaching to others. He tells one person, Socrates tells 10 people, they tell 10 people, they tell 10 people, and that's like 50,000 people right there. We're on our way. If he gains this confirming vision, he can only then be said to have proceeded through ignorance. Actually, no, not boo, because this is philosophical ignorance. Last time we talked about one of the biggest difficulties is the first hurdle in the race. Which is the movement from... We did it on the board. From pathologos ignorance to philosophical ignorance. Because if you don't know you're wrong about something, then how can you even begin to learn? So you have to first realize you're wrong and not run away or get pissed at finding out you're wrong. A certain level of courage, maturity, honor, integrity is needed to move from false certainty, ignorance, to I'm aware I don't know, but I'm going to be like Socrates and keep pursuing the question. Can't see it on the board. So he moves through philosophical ignorance, which is good, to right opinion, to understanding and having reached knowledge or wisdom.
A win-win-win-win-win.
Thus, he moves through all the places of the analogy, occupies each, and completes what was required to be done. So there is some, so that's our work, right? We have to move through it and do whatever we have to do in each level. Clearly, Diotima recognizes the difficulty of this cognitive jump from understanding to knowledge, since he shares with Socrates her own reservations about Socrates' ability to make that transition, saying, "I do not know if you could ever become an adept, but I will still instruct you, and no pains will be lacking in me trying, so follow me if you can." Thus, Plato presents Socrates' growth and development. Plato presents that Socrates' growth and development was made possible because after he realized his answers to Diotima's questions were wrong, he persisted in his questioning of Diotima. So already he is the sort of person who's open to following questions. Whereas people who are the most stuck or the most stupid, ignorant, and harmful insist on making speeches. Have you ever seen Peterson or Shapiro or Trump follow somebody else's questions? No, because that leads to truth. And their job is, they're paid to fuck up everything. So in the short amount of time where humanity can still survive while being abused by the pathologos of these capitalist tyrants, until we all go extinct, they can have 16 yachts and 400,000 houses and own all of the companies. That's why they lie. Which means they have to silence logos and dialectic, which means they make speeches. Socrates wasn't making speeches to Diotima the way these ignorant jerks do. He was following questions. And last time we talked about how there was that weird YouTube video, Jordan Peterson versus 20 atheist debate bros from college. And it was a shit show. In the best possible way. It has shown humanity this is how far debate can get you. Yeah. Number one, Peterson never answered any questions. If he was asked a question, he would get angry because his idea of truth is the same sort of anger that his dad modeled to him. So Peterson's always, "I'm angry, tidy your room." Not because it's good, but because he is trying to mimic the pathologos of the sort of people who have abusive parents like him. These are the most vulnerable, who never had anyone supporting them, never had logos and reflection. These are the people most in need. And because the left, or there aren't human beings offering midwifery to help these lonely, confused, abused people realize their parents were wrong, understand their pathologos, free themselves from their failures to get success, because they aren't out there, these grifters take advantage of their pathologos images. So Peterson is acting like some sort of comic book villain in order to imitate the villain of the households of Americans. And he can't answer any questions. But the YouTube video is good only that it shows you where debate ends. You've got the fresh out of college, the 20 best debaters. Were they able to stand up to the guy championing the next Holocaust? Saying it's okay to send people to concentration camps in El Salvador for speaking up against Trump's corruption? That's what Peterson does. It's what he's paid for by the Daily Wire. Were the best debaters able to help him change his mind? No way. Just made Peterson more ignorant. Hey, welcome. Welcome, Chemical Soup. What have we got here? Imagine being rich and being able to end world hunger and suffering, but saying it's not profitable. Exactly. Time to make a farm in New Zealand and live like a hobbit. Call it the farm Middle Earth. New Zealand's facing the same problems, my friend. All of humanity is. New Zealand and Australia import the fascism that's trialed in America. The biggest export of America is fascism. So right now in Australia and New Zealand, our natural resources are being stolen by billionaire businessmen from overseas. And they are destroying our environment. They're destroying all our natural resources. They're destroying our natural heritage. And our government is paying them billions of dollars to do so. They pay no tax. In fact, they sell us back our gas at the highest prices anywhere in the world. Australia is fucking corrupt. And it's an export of the same capitalist fascism from America, which is what happens if we don't do midwifery. If we don't demand true excellence and leadership, the people imitating their pathologos will force their way in and lie. So the Australian politicians are lying to us to say, oh, we need this because we all benefit by selling all our resources to overseas billionaires who are already fucking filthy rich. We benefit by them not cleaning up. So we have to play, when they just abandon their oil rigs, we have to clean it up. And by the way, they don't even clean up their waste, they dump it into our ecosystem. The same fucking corrupt politicians are paid to lie to us using the language of goodness and benefit. Because human beings seek goodness and benefit. They can't be honest and say, yeah, I'm going to harm you because I will profit in the short term before we go extinct because of what I'm doing. They're usurping the language of philosophy and logos to lie to us and pretend it's for our benefit. They refuse to answer questions, fake news and all that. They can only give speeches and threaten to send you to El Salvadorian concentration camps or drop bombs on your head like the Israelis and Americans are doing all over the world. And was the person who is marketing that sickness able to change his mind through debate? No. Did he walk away more angry and certain in his beliefs? Yes. Did he walk away with more of a disdain for humanity because he was shown to be absurd? Yes. So we have seen it. That's it. That's as far as debates go. The most important, or a personification of the most important person to change his mind. Someone who's the personification of propaganda for evil. Jordan Peterson. He wasn't able to change his mind. Even with 20 debate bros. Who were right. Usually. In that one. So we have seen it doesn't work, it just makes things fucking worse. That's debate. So what? What we are learning is debate is so bad because of the pathologos. In that,
the problem is that you can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into.
They didn't reason themselves into their pathologos, and as we saw, Da, 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 da. Well, first of all, Peterson is representing this distorted analogy, the fake analogy. That's redundant. Peterson is shitting on children and the planet the same way he was shat on by his parents. And no amount of debate's going to convince him his daddy wasn't all-knowing. The only thing that can is midwifery. In fact, the introduction of reason and evidence can make people confused and defensive about their situation because they cannot relate to the existence of that which they cannot acknowledge because of their amnesia, and the pathologos specifically interprets or projects a reality that's not real that prevents them from seeing the evidence that they would need to change their mind. And also, what we also saw is, here we go. The power of prejudice may be nullified or modified by opposing data and evidence, maybe a debate bro, without having to trace how and why it was learned, whereas Peterson's, Hitler, Trump, Putin's pathologos maintains itself securely and is even strengthened by this debate bro introduction of data or evidence that is opposed to its claims. They become more Nazi, and they didn't change their mind. So, time to put debates to bed, hey? And instead, practice the true model of learning, A is to B as B is to C, which is formally called the dialectic, which involves asking questions by someone who has actual truth and knowledge, like Diotima, or Socrates, or Pierre Grimes, or the art that we are learning of the dialectic and of midwifery, following along, answering those questions, realizing that you were wrong, not running away like Agathon in the symposium, but sticking around like Socrates, and to continue the inquiry to learn the right opinions about the subject. Then the next step from right opinions to understanding, and then confirming indirect experience of beauty itself, which is eternal, immortal, infinite, but also all of the parts. As we said, the second hypothesis, infinite and all of the whole, all of the parts. And that's an enlightenment experience. And if you can do that, you confirm your understanding in the directed vision. That's called wisdom. And you've completed what you're here to do as a human being. Climb through the hierarchical ladder of cognition, including experiencing the difficulties it took for you to make every step. How hard was it to overcome your pathologos? How hard was it to be open to right opinions and not, I know what I know because my daddy said so, or my priest said so? How hard is it to be open to learning? Peterson isn't going to learn any new right opinions. Fuck no. Think Trump has even learned anything in his life other than imitating his racist Ku Klux Klan leader father? Nope. But Socrates' growth was made possible after he realized his answers, so he's already following questions, unlike a debate, which is just sick. It's fucking gross, man. Here are some facts. I owned you. So he realized his questions were wrong. He persisted in questioning of Diotima. As a result, came to learn the reasons why his opinions about love and philosophy were right. He can be said to have reached understanding because when one has the reasons as to why these opinions are right, not mums or dads or priests or Petersons or Hitlers, these ones from Diotima who's qualified, and we can understand the qualification because of what she has done. It's talked about in the symposium, and because of her ability to explain it and ask questions. It ain't belief. But once you find why they're right, it's called understanding. In a similar way, to reach knowledge, Socrates would have to experience the perfection of beauty. Experience the metaphysical realm, or the realm of just mind, not mind in a body through the senses to see physical things, just mind on its own, experiencing mind. That's the perfection of beauty, or the second hypothesis, or mind minding mind. Notice, the object is mind, what you're seeing is mind, and the activity of grasping through consciousness is mind. So it's mind minding mind, a kind of oneness. And then in that way, you have confirmed your understanding through an experience of beauty itself. This is learning. If your school doesn't have an initiation into the perfection of beauty, it ain't fucking learning. It's oppression. Or creating people, training people to be cogs in a machine to defend the pathologos of the leaders, or barbarism. Follow the leader. No understanding, no right opinions, not even philosophical ignorance. Just regurgitating the same sick, false beliefs of whatever the leader is saying. What we are learning is that's formally one of two paradigms of learning. It's the stagnant, distorted learning, which is actually not even an analogy. It's A is to B is A is to B. It's redundant. I'm oppressing you, says the teacher, the same way I learned to do it at school. I'm sending you to prison as a lawyer the same way, blah, 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 blah. I'm crushing you the same way, blah, 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 blah. I'm voting for Trump to crush us the same way, blah, 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 blah. It's redundant. The other model of learning is the analogical paradigm of real teaching, which is A is to B, as B is to C, and takes you all the way through from, here we go, from understanding the 6 kinds of beliefs, understanding the difference between that and right opinion, understanding the difference between that and, well, ignorance, right opinion and then understanding the nature of knowledge and reality and truth, experiencing it with the understanding, being able to function with both as a teacher so that you become a mean term, you become like Socrates, you've been taught from Socrates, now you can teach others using your understanding and experience of how hard it was and what was needed, as well as your understanding and experience to benefit in this way, which is simply following the actual only model of real teaching, which is the most basic expression of analogy itself. A is to B as B is to C is the simplest way of expressing analogy and is the true model of teaching. The human problem is the interference between sharing in that which leads to success and the other wave which pulls us back into the past. This can move you to the future, your destiny. The past model, which is the distorted imitation. Meaning, no need for cults or religions or private Catholic college versus public college. Nope. No need for killing people with different beliefs. No need for any of that division or groups or gang mentality or barbarism. Just one model of the true analogy of the teaching paradigm that takes you for yourself through all of the stages of human development, all the way to fucking enlightenment where you know the nature of reality. And that ain't the end. Because something has to have caused it. Let's check in with the chat. Sorry about that, chat. I got on a bit of a roll there. Hi, how are you doing? How are you? I'm curious and inspired, passionate right now. And what are we doing? We are understanding the cause of the nature of human problems. The nature of human problems is called a certain class of belief called a pathologos belief. All human beings get it. And it keeps us stuck to one way of being and one way of acting in our most important situations when we're pursuing something most important to us. Prevents us from reasoning or changing. It keeps us tied to a form of being called barbarism, where we follow the leader based on imitation. So we're learning the method all human beings need to learn to understand and remove that which causes human problems. That art and skill and art of removing said problems is the art we are here to learn as human beings, because it allows us to move from pathologos, false beliefs about self and reality, to being open to following the actual logos, following the inherent, reasoned nature of reality, using the dialectic in our reading to go through those cognitive stages we've been talking about to fulfill our purpose or destiny, complete our work as human beings. So there are two things involved in that. There is understanding what we are carrying that's false, the pathologos, that functions as a problem specifically because it blocks us from following the logos to reach our highest goals. So you got to do that. You got to remove the stuff that blocks you. And at the same time, learning about the truth. So to learn about the truth, we read Socrates because he's a master of the logos. And we read the Balboa translation because it's the only translation that actually has the words right. All of the previous translations of Socrates, through Plato, of course, Socrates didn't write it down himself, has been bullshit, has been specific distortions of the key words to present what Socrates was saying as the opposite. We have been being lied to for a very long time, but we can learn the logos and the dialectic, which is the activity or structure of thinking, of conversation, of critical thinking, of reading as well. When we read without interpretation, projecting our shit from the past and actually see it for what it is, we are sharing in a kind of thinking that the author is in, Socrates. So we are becoming like him. And then half the time on the channel, we do the other part of the game, philosophical midwifery. Uncovering and giving birth to the false beliefs about the things we study in philosophy. The false beliefs about self and the world. The false beliefs about justice and beauty that chain us to ignorance and suffering. Repeating cycles of the same fucking problems and states of mind over and over and over and over and over again. In other words,
no one seems to be learning or growing or addressing actual problems.
Addressing that. No one's learning or growing or addressing actual problems because the skill and art required to do that is called philosophical midwifery, and we are learning it. We find ourselves here at a point of human history where human beings are still barbarians, but have the opportunity to transition from barbarians into Homo sapiens, or man the thinker. Or, more accurately, Homo ludens, because this way of thinking and being makes you man the player. And this is the noblest game. This is what we're doing. Thank you for asking. Are we reading Socrates? Yes, but not today. We're almost finished the Meno, but there is a link to the YouTube channel. I put all the videos on YouTube so you can go through the other dialogues we've read together. And if this channel gets more popular, we'll do even more stuff because there are so many cool dialogues written by Pierre Grimes, another master of the logos, and Socrates. So we're doing what we can. I'm a go, but thank you for the stream. Yay for a week of being vegan. Oh, good for you. Thank you again, Mr. Philosophy Dude. You're welcome. Where's a drop?
We're gonna engage in dishonest.
Whoops. I haven't used this one yet. I haven't found an opportunity for this drop.
We're gonna engage in dishonesty?
I guess I have to wait for a chatter to be dishonest.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the childlike wonder, dude?
There you go. You said dude, so that was a good excuse for that drop. Enjoy your day, Sus. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for the questions. Oh, and it was cool to see you applying the terms that you're learning about the logos to make sense of what we were talking about earlier. That was neat. But yeah, keep the fun, keep the joy, keep the childlike wonder as you follow your questions.
Where's the joy? Where's the whimsy? Where's the childlike wonder, dude?
There you go. So yeah, thanks for the question, Chemical. I did a smart thing. Yay me, learn. Thank you. Yeah, that's neat. That's important to celebrate that. Because we spend so much time working on our pathologos failures, which is the most important thing a human can do, we have to also acknowledge the successes, including high states of mind, insights, enlightenment experiences, and states of being of clarity. They're the hard ones because they don't have a quality. How do you recognize when you're in a state empty of qualities? And how do you value it? You can only value it if you've been learning to understand it. Yeah, there's a whole different thing we can go on. This is important because in dream analysis too, people can have different levels of enlightenment experiences, but as you know about dreams, you forget. Even people who remember their dreams because they practice recording it for dream analysis, the best midwife you can have, even then, people often, miss their high states. So it's very important to celebrate your successes in logos or states of being. So good for you. Oh, the next thing is, once you've acknowledged them and celebrated them, wonder about them. What caused it? Keep going. That's the ousia. Oh, I wonder what caused that. Or I wonder what's beyond that. Or wonder what I could use that state of being for. Will it help my reading?
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. All right, so so we can thank the author of this book to really break down and summarize philosophy with this reference to Socrates going through these stages in the dialectic. What's education? Simply a movement through these cognitive functions. That can be ranked hierarchically. Finding these key terms, ranking them hierarchically, that's understanding. You can confirm your understanding by moving through them. And then you use that combination of both, or wisdom, to pass on that teaching to others and become like Socrates as the mean term, passing on the Dharma teaching. That's for everyone. It's the human teaching. It's the human Dharma. So we call it perennial philosophy. It's not one philosophy among many. It's the parent or perennial philosophy. Just like there aren't many different types of mechanics. It's just you're a mechanic or you're not. You're doing it well or you're not. There's only one way of flying a plane. You're either doing it well or you're not. There's only one philosophy. You're either doing it well or there is a wave-like imposition of your pathologos that cancels out some part of your learning through the true teaching paradigm analogy that Socrates has demonstrated for us, giving us the model for ourselves. So thank you for our author for breaking down the symposium like that. In a similar way, right, so Socrates would have to experience the perfection of beauty, notice capital B, and in that way to have confirmed the understanding through an experience of beauty itself. Now, this makes sense in English, but when we read it in philosophy, the Greeks would say self-beauty, because it has its own selfhood. It has its own kind of existence. So we call these terms that are of that realm the selfers. In a similar way, if Agathon could have accepted Socrates' challenge, then he would become Socratic. For Socrates was functioning with Agathon the way Diotima had functioned previously with Socrates. In a similar way, if Socrates was successful, he in turn would be like Diotima. So, Agathon dropped the ball. If we were Agathon's friends and we were at the party, the symposium's a drinking party, right after the Oscars. So the greatest playwrights and biggest figures in their culture for comedy and drama were celebrating the awards from the previous day. And they got wasted last night as well, and they're getting wasted again. That's the symposium. They're having a party. If you were there and you were Agathon's friend, you would say, "Hey, Agathon, you didn't accept Socrates' challenge. You dropped the ball. It might be time for a midwife talk." That's what it is. So, if he did find out why he was blocked through you, midwife, having a talk with him, he would become Socratic. For Socrates was functioning with Agathon the way Diotima had functioned previously with Socrates. In a similar way, if Socrates were successful, he in turn would be like Diotima. Thus, in the symposium, we find Socrates modeling himself after Diotima. We represent this kind of learning in the similes. So we've gone from analogy, one is to another, as one is to another, to likeness. So from that analogy, we can pull out a simile and say, Agathon becomes like Socrates, Socrates becomes like Diotima. This allows for the possibility that Agathon would look forward to meeting someone who was like he formerly was, and take that person through what he had been taken through, while Socrates would in turn pass on the favor to someone who was formerly like he was, in terms of cognitive functioning. So in terms of cognitive functioning, we say that Agathon has moved from ignorance to right opinion, as Socrates has moved from understanding to knowledge. So we pass it on. Pass on the Dharma. Become a mean term. Of course you would. Why? They'd be excited, was it? They'd look forward to meeting someone who was like them. Oh, you're like I was. Here's the thing that helped me. You can benefit. And if I pass it on, I'm also benefited because now I become like Socrates. I have upgraded and you have upgraded. We've both leveled up. And it was a win-win.
It's a win-win.
All right. That's 2.5 hours. Okay, let's call the stream there. So we've reviewed what we read last time, added more context into it, took questions from the chat, and we're up to about here, where we were last time. Super interesting, wasn't it? If you're a barbarian, you'd say no. If you're crossing that threshold to enter the true human race, you'd say, yes, very interesting. I will donate to your channel, if you like. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm kidding, of course. Only donate if you think this is worthwhile and you have the means, because you know it's just going to afford me more time to do more of this and increase the channel, become more of a mean between the extremes. Thank you for joining me. Featured players today. I think this strange unicorn. Look at how cute that little thing is. Take a bow. We had the owl who didn't say anything. Take a bow. And we have Baby Phoenix Stuffy. These were the featured players. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the comments and chat. Feel free to join the Discord or the YouTube channel, or like and subscribe, or whatever happens, and leave comments if you like. Thank you once again, and I will see you next time. Bye.